The state of healthcare is on the decline, especially for women. So we're talking to one woman today who is taking matters into her own hands. I'm Mallory Hagan.
And I'm Maggie Gehlsen-Burnett. This is Pretty Furious.
Okay, Maggie. Okay, I'm actually done with the okay, Maggie. That was the last one. It won't be, for sure. As per usual, a week full of absolutely out-of-pocket headlines.
I totally forgot that Pete Hegseth hit the group chat again.
Hit the group chat again. And the Pope died, thanks to JD Vance.
And the Pope died, thanks to JD Vance.
Yeah. Also, rumor has it, they're considering getting rid of Pete Hegseth. So in case anyone has ever questioned whether or not public pressure works when it comes to shouting from the rooftops about the idiocy that knows no bounds, considering Pete Hegseth, it does. So let's keep it up. But before we get into what we got going on,
like us, follow us, share us. We are at Pretty Furious Pod everywhere. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts. The best way to support us is obviously by listening to the show. But we would also love if you could rate and review us, particularly on iTunes and Spotify. We got another 1-star rating, Mallory.
Yeah, you told me, but I actually haven't read it yet. Do you want to read it to me? Let me react in real time.
There's no review that goes along with it. It's just a rating. So
what a dick.
I know, when people leave ratings and reviews, they can just choose to leave a rating. And this person opted for, just the 1-star, but that's okay. It will be turned around by somebody here soon, I'm sure. So
that's all right. A 1-star review, likely by a 1-star person, so no big deal.
Exactly. I would take bets on the state that they're from. Anyway, but you can't be pretty furious without being pretty first. Mallory, do you have a product this week that you're loving?
I do, actually. So I've been kind of back into a little bit of a 5-minute face situation, just traveling a lot here recently. And I am back on my Laura Mercier eyeshadow stick, these things. Ooh. So on my eyes right now, all I have on is a little bit of brown eyeliner, and then I just have this all over the lid. And I just kind of blend it out with a brush and put on some mascara, and boom, bada bing. So I have on Kiss from a Rose. That's the color I'm wearing. But I find these to be, first of all, really easy to use. And second of all, they stay. They don't like blend. You know how sometimes your eyeliner will like bleed into something like this? Nothing. Stays on all day long. Wonderful. So Laura Mercier, thank you. That's my product. How about you?
Love that. My sister is obsessed with those, by the way. And last time I saw them, they had a 3-pack available on Nordstrom Rack. So There you have it. My product is the Makeup by Mario Soft Sculpt Transforming Skin Enhancer. This is what it looks like. You can see it is obviously well loved. So this is basically just like a bronzing contour cream. But I will tell you, like a toddler could do it. It blends so well. It looks super natural on the skin. It's not like cakey or heavy or any of that. It lasts all day. I'm in the shade light medium. But I've really been liking the Makeup by Mario brand. Really good stuff.
It's funny that you brought that up. I have some foundation that is Makeup by Mario, but I have literally never tried any other products. So I really should.
Really good stuff.
All right, Maggie, what headline made you pretty furious this week?
Okay, so my headline comes from the New York Times, and it says, White House assesses ways to persuade women to have more children. And I just
how about
I just don't know what you want from me.
Yeah,
I'm just a girl asking for healthcare.
how about paid family leave?
Literally a week of paid maternity leave would be super sick. Also, I would love if childcare wasn't $1 trillion. That's fundamentally it. But that's mine. Just Republicans wanting us to crank out more babies because the birth rate is so low. So.
I mean, I have to say it again. The solutions to these things are so simple. You want people to have more children, pay them a livable wage, and make sure that they have the resources necessary in order to bring those children into the world safely and be able to maintain their life in such a way that that child has access to care. It's not that difficult.
Yeah.
God,
and
so
maybe also a safe school environment would be sick too. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's my headline. What about yours?
Okay, this isn't my headline, but you made me think about it. A safe school environment. I saw a headline today that said that they are looking to ban phones in schools across the United States and that Congress is going to get involved. And I'm like, a phone before we do something about these mother guns? Are you kidding me? Anyway, that's not my headline, but yeah, safe schools would be great. Okay, so my headline today is actually from a story that the Today Show ran. It says women are less likely to die or return to the hospital if they are treated by a female doctor compared to a male doctor, studies suggest. So if you want to read the full story and the study, it is available on the Today Show's Instagram, which is where this came from. But essentially it says in the study of people 65 and older, 8.15% of women treated by a female physician died within 30 days compared to 8.38% of women who were treated by male physicians. So not a huge discrepancy, but one nonetheless. We're talking a lot about women's health today with Allyn Rose, who's our guest. So we'll get into a little bit of how the healthcare system fails us when it comes to things like diagnosing breast cancer or preventive care when it comes to breast cancer. It's hard to believe that we've known each other for 13 years now. But she is best known for her powerful journey as a breast cancer advocate and her groundbreaking achievements, including becoming the first woman with a mastectomy to model for Sports Illustrated swimsuit. Her bold decision to undergo a preventative double mastectomy as a 24-year-old Miss America contestant ignited a conversation around the globe about the importance of preventative health care. Allyn is the founder and the president of the Previvor, the first nonprofit dedicated to educating women on their options for cancer prevention, genetic testing, IVF, and beyond. Allyn's advocacy has earned her accolades such as the Congressional Women's Health Advocacy Award and the Lifetime Achievement Award. Allyn continues to inspire others with a very powerful message: life over vanity.
Well, Allyn, thank you so much for joining us today.
The Pope is dead. That's a headline for us now. And the last person to see him is the vice president. That's also crazy. My husband was asking me, he's like, how do you think this is going to go for J.D. Vance? One of the last people to see the Pope. And now he drops dead. I'm like, oh my God.
I posted a meme to my close friends that was like, and in conclusion, J.D. Vance killed the Pope or something like that. I was like, yeah.
I don't know how you guys feel about this, the space flight that just went up or whatever, but I don't know, my friends and I were just sending each other back Kardashian memes of Kim, people are dying. Oh my God.
100%. I saw there was an influencer who was doing sort of a skit, and he was like, this is what the world feels like right now. And it's him pretending to be a girl who's like, oh my God, so this is what I'm wearing to Coachella. What do you think about this outfit? And he's like, are you aware that our democracy is literally slipping through our fingers? And she's like, yeah, but so anyway, I'm actually a guest of... He's like, this is what the internet feels like at this very moment. Sure. We've just got two separate worlds happening.
So I want to start by asking you a question because we don't know each other. And so I think it would be really helpful to have some context as to your story and maybe sharing a little bit about why you made the decision to have a preventative double mastectomy when you were 26, was it?
It really is a story that starts with my mother. She was diagnosed with breast cancer for the first time at 27, and it was a really aggressive stage 3 breast cancer, almost took her life. And I just knew my mother my entire life as a breast cancer survivor. And, unfortunately, she was diagnosed 20 years later in the other breast. And I lost my mom a month after my 16th birthday. And so I carried that loss with me throughout my life and decided at 18 to undergo this procedure. Obviously, I didn't go through with it until a couple years later, but my dad had sat me down and tried to talk to me about really the realities in my family. It wasn't just my mother, it was my grandmother, it was my great aunt. All of the women on both sides of my family had passed away from this disease. And he said, if you don't do this, you're going to end up dead like your mom. And that at 18, after losing my mom 2 years prior, was a bit of a shock. But I think I realized as time went on the wisdom in what he was trying to say. He wanted me to have forethought. He wanted me to have long-term perspective and to realize 27 wasn't that far off. And if I was anything like my mom, that might be my fate too. So I had the incredible opportunity to compete with Mallory at Miss America and have this big viral moment where I had shared the decision to undergo a preventative surgery. And then, after pageants were over and getting into the real world, I said, hey, I have to do this now. So just a couple of months shy of my 27th birthday, I had the procedure. And I'm a very lucky person in the sense that I had a great cosmetic outcome. Most people from the outside would never know I had this procedure if I wasn't shouting it from the mountaintops every day like I am. But it is a very invasive procedure. It's something that really can impact how you face the world. And I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to do it in what I consider to be really helping save or prolong my life as much as I could based on, my genetic background and my family history.
In what ways do you see the Previvor contributing to the feminist movement, particularly in empowering women to make more informed healthcare decisions?
Well, just going into this procedure myself, I realized just what a lack of information there was anywhere, particularly on the internet when it came to having a procedure like this. And I thought, hundreds of thousands of women are probably undergoing a procedure like this every year. How is there no one place where people could go to learn about their options? And it just became this revolving door of, okay, you come in, the doctor tells you what he specializes in, and out the door you go. And most of the time that's get breast implants and see you later. And for so many women, that's not what's most appropriate for their lifestyle. Maybe they're a CrossFit athlete. Maybe they don't want to reconstruct their breast after a procedure like this, but these options weren't being shared with women. And the horrifying thing, and I say this, and it's not, people always saying, oh, this is fake news, fake stories, but women were waking up in the operating room with breasts after they told their doctor, I don't want to reconstruct, because the doctor said, oh, you'll regret it later. Let me just throw a couple in there for you. I had gone through this procedure myself. I became Dr. Google. I learned everything that there was to know, all of my options, and I knew that that just wasn't anything relatable for the average person. I was somebody that came from a background where it was completely healthcare positive, know your options, be proactive, but that's just not the case for most women and shouldn't be the case. There should be some easily digestible way for women to learn about their options for something like this, because having a preventative procedure is one thing, but if you're faced with a cancer diagnosis and a clock is ticking, you don't have the time that I did to research what your options are. And all of the research tells us that women who feel engaged in the decision-making process, whether or not the decision that they make is best for them, they're happier with the outcome because they decided this is what I would like to do. So I sat down, I had just finished, I got a master's degree in law, I'd moved to a foreign country and said, hey, I'm going to build something. I don't know if it's going to help anybody, but if there's anybody out there like me, let's just have this platform. It's at least going to inform women of their options. And it's grown into this really incredible movement of women feeling proactive in their healthcare, women feeling like they're back in the driver's seat of their healthcare choices, and they get to decide. They have all of the information in their pocket. They can pick up their cell phone, take it into a doctor's office, and when he says, okay, well, you get breast implants, he's like, well, actually, there's 16 more options, and if you're not willing to give me what I want, on to the next doctor.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm really curious to know, just kind of backing up a little bit, when you had this procedure done, how having this impacted the way that you view yourself or the connection you have to your own body. I think a lot of times as women, all of us can attest through pageantry, we know that so much of our worth from a young age is, we are constantly bombarded with the messaging that our body equates our worth. I'm curious to know, just from your background, what that was like for you in terms of kind of like having that connection to yourself.
I think there's multiple levels to this. So I grew up very much a tomboy, played guitar in a punk rock band before I did my first pageant, just the antithesis of anything that you would ever imagine competing in something like Miss America or Miss USA. And so I thought to myself that I was outside of vanity, of my self-worth being wrapped in the way that I looked. I'd spent the majority of my life having that not be the case, but being in the beauty industry, partaking in that, I then went on to be a model. So much of my income, my life was tied to the way that I looked. So undergoing a procedure like this where I was preventatively removing my breasts, this thing that's a secondary sexual organ, it's very impactful on how you face the world, intimacy, with your partners, all kinds of things. And I remember waking up from the surgery and looking at myself in the mirror and saying, oh my God, what have I done? And I spent so much time feeling empowered, being proactive, having everyone support me in this decision. But when you wake up with a concave chest and look at yourself in the mirror, I started thinking back to these journal entries that my mom had left me. She left me all her journals after she passed. And she talked about when she had her cancer surgery and they had to remove her breast all the way down to the chest wall. She was never able to reconstruct. And the first thing she thought wasn't, oh my God, I'm going to die. Oh my God, I have cancer. It's, I'm not married. I don't have any kids. And what man's ever going to love me with one breast? And I remember sort of having these flashbacks of reading those lines, thinking, what person's going to love me looking like this? And in the same breath, I have my, future husband in the other room as my nurse, as my caretaker, saying, I don't care what you look like. I want you to be around for the next 60 years. But it was truly a journey of self rediscovery and learning how to love my body again. And, like I'd mentioned, I had a great cosmetic outcome. I feel very, very blessed in that. But when you have a mastectomy and a 2-stage procedure like I did, all of my breasts were removed. I had a tissue expander, which is basically an empty balloon placed under your chest wall. It slowly expanded over several months. And so I just looked like Frankenstein with footballs underneath my chest. It's gory. You have drains coming out, to all these things that we don't want to talk about. You see celebrities say, oh, I had a preventative surgery or I had cancer. And, they talk about it months down the road, years down the road, after they've recovered, after they're in this perfect, glamorized, reconstructed state. But so few women talk about the realities of what it's actually like to go through this, what it's like to get used to a new body and to re-love yourself. And, because I had a great cosmetic outcome, it was a bit more of a seamless process, but that's not the case for every woman. And so I can't even imagine what it's like to do that and then to radically change your body and have to feel like you're explaining that body to a future partner, looking in the mirror every day saying, well, this isn't who I was before. How can I love this now? It's just this very multifaceted experience, but I'm grateful I did experience it. I think it's really changed my perspective on who I am, where I find my value, and, how I face the world, how unimportant all of these things are. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to be able to raise my children, and grateful for the guy that stuck around and is now my husband and father of those 2 little kids. And it was an eye-opening experience for sure.
Yeah.
How do you think this has shaped how you parent 2 little girls? The ideas of beauty that all 3 of us have experienced from a societal perspective, and just how does that shape how you talk to them about who they are and where their beauty comes from and their worth?
I'm hyper aware of how I talk about myself, because I remember really vividly how my mother would talk about her body, and she was always calling herself fast. I grew up with a 90s slim fast mom who was always on a diet, always trying to do things. And my mom was a very successful architect. She built her own business. She had all of these incredible accolades and respect in the community, but the way that she looked also mattered to her. And so just hearing her talk about it, and I remember my little brother looking at her, and she's just kind of poking at herself in the mirror. Oh, I'm fat. I've gained this weight. And he goes, Mom, you're not fat. You're beautiful. And she just kind of turned around, and you saw how her face had changed. And so now when I look at my little girls, I'm really hyper vigilant about how I discuss the way that my body looks. And that's hard during a postpartum process. So I have now a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. And so my body was changing, and it was bigger and it's smaller, and things are going through transition. So really trying to be carefully curate the words that I use. And then also when I talk about them, my daughter was having a bath the other day and I was making a comment like, oh, look at your little belly, because she had just eaten a big dinner, and her face dropped and she's like, Mom, you said something bad about my body. And I just went into crisis panic mode. I'm like, of course, I did not say anything bad about your body. I just wanted to say how great it is that you ate a meal and your body's going to be stronger. And, the food that you put in your body gives you energy, helps you be able to think. But this was a 3-year-old who was already able to sort of discern and have those feelings about talking about their body. And so it's just completely restructured how I think and makes me want to ensure that they don't grow up the same way that I did, the same way that my mother did, looking in the mirror every day and tearing themselves apart and always thinking that they were the way that they looked 5-10 years ago when they were also tearing themselves apart.
I think it's so interesting to hear you talk about that because, we have 2 little boys, and it is a topic of conversation between me and my husband about how we talk about bodies. My husband is extremely conscious of his health and works out, and part of that is his job. He's in the Army, and just how we engage with conversations around the way people look, whether we're talking about other people or ourselves. And it has been brought into hyper focus now that I'm a parent, how I talk about my own body or how I talk about other people's. And so I'm sure when you combine that with having 2 little girls in particular, with the way the world works, definitely makes you rethink just even that, even a comment about eating food. It's something that we're all, relearning how to do.
Yeah, and I think it's a great thing. Millennial parents are, I really think, changing the trajectory of how we parent, and being very mindful, and not to criticize the boomers or anything, but
it's okay, you can.
Thinking about this at all. Like, this is so not part of the conversation. And, also I came from, both of my parents were in very poor backgrounds. They had nothing. They bootstrapped it, worked their way up. They had enough on their plate. But I still also think, I'm like, I have my own struggles in my life. And it's hard every day to have to, like we were talking about, curate the words that you are using, being so intentional about how you're communicating, not just about yourself, but about other people. There's a man who lives in our neighborhood who he's missing both legs and one arm, and he goes around in a wheelchair, and learning how to carefully explain that to your children, how that happens, what it is, how you communicate, how you look at, people in that position. And it's hard, but I think being conscious of it and making an effort is half the battle. And so I already feel ahead of the game because it's miles ahead of how I was raised. And so, you just do the best that you can and try to keep learning. And that's all you can do.
Yeah. Maggie and I have said once or twice here, it's like, when you know better, you do better.
Do better.
Yeah.
Right.
Just being more aware, being more conscious. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned you had this massive viral moment when you were competing for Miss America. And then you mentioned how, celebrities will have sort of these preventative procedures and then just come back from them and like sort of just barely allude to them. So I'm curious to know how maybe the media perception of your story and that publicity, maybe how you think that helped people to reshape or rethink how they think about having this procedure done.
So this was 2000 and, oh gosh, where were we? 2013, which sounds like yesterday to me, but to a lot of listeners, I'm sure 1,000 years ago. But it was really just the wild, wild west of the internet and women really discussing things like this. There weren't a lot of celebrities talking about it. And if they were 60 years old and definitely not someone in their 20s, peak of their femininity, the way that they look, someone in the beauty industry. So really being sort of thrust into this position where I felt a bit like I had to be the mouthpiece for my generation, talking about this topic that I didn't fully understand. My frontal lobe's not even developed, finding out later, I have ADHD, all these sort of things. I'm like, okay, it's 35 until I'm fully developed up here. It was a big burden. I'm grateful for the platform, but it did feel very overwhelming. And then a year after I went public, Angelina Jolie shared her story. But again, she was somebody who shared her story once she had healed, once she was on the other side. It was really an incredible moment where it changed the conversation about preventative healthcare in this space. But I think it really opened the floodgates for women to start feeling more comfortable discussing this and talking about it. And I think there was a culture shift, as the years progressed, in people feeling more comfortable to be raw and sharing the process and how relatable that made them seem. And I remember having my procedure and going through it, and obviously I wasn't a celebrity at all at the time. But even so, I remember Mallory and Maggie, maybe you'll remember this too, the Voy boards back in the day of all this gossip and all these people talking about, pageant contestants, etc. And somebody had said, she's a nasty opportunist who's used her mother's death to help her win a beauty pageant.
That is so.
Oh my God. People were ruthless on those Voy forums. Oh my God.
Yeah, not shocked, but also just.
Yeah, evil. Like truly, truly evil. But in the moment, if you're a self-reflective person, you take that in and think, oh my God, am I monopolizing on this bad situation in my life? Am I doing things for the right reasons? Should I even be platformed talking about this? But you realize, there's somebody out there who's voiceless, somebody out there who's going through this without the support system that, I had, that other women have, and they need to feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel. And, nobody likes to see the aspirational figure at the end, like that's not really the funnest story. But for me, I said, okay, I did have a great outcome. I have been able to go on and do wonderful things. And instead of wanting to make that voice smaller because I had the good storybook ending, I've decided I'm going to amplify it because it's going to give some other woman hope. And another woman who's going through a preventative surgery like this should feel empowered to go in and talk to her doctor and say, I want to look the best I possibly can. I want to have the surgery that is most appropriate for my body. And I want to feel empowered in this decision-making process because my healthcare matters. And so it's just been a pattern of ebbs and flows and trying to figure it out and feeling like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be sharing the story, but oh, I definitely have to do it. But I mean, I'm grateful for the women who came before me because I also Googled around, got on social media platforms, tried to find people that looked like me going through it, and it just didn't exist at the time. And so now to be able to collect different voices, women of different colors, different body sizes, different ages, different, chapters of life, so that every woman going through this is able to find someone they can connect with and say, okay, deep breath, light at the end of the tunnel here for me.
You mentioned being platformed at a young age through the Miss America organization, and obviously I relate to that. One thing I found while I was traveling as Miss America talking about child sexual abuse was just, first of all, I didn't know I had been sexually abused, so I was learning that in real time while I was talking about it every day. And at 24, which I think you were also 24 at the time, frontal lobe not developed, despite the fact that you think you know everything about the world. How did you find that time when it came to dealing with your grief? You're out here talking about your mom over and over and over again. Was that something that was challenging for you? And if it was, how did you work through that?
It just gave me chills. I feel like no one has ever asked me that question, and it's something that I've just sort of started to grapple with, because a few years after, when the sort of fame wave, notoriety wave had fallen a bit, and I'm trying to figure out, what am I going to do with the rest of my life, I just realized how exhausted I was, and I really had to take a couple of years, which sounds crazy, but like a couple of years off to just not talk about death anymore, not talk about surgeries anymore, not talk about every woman in my family dying, and just I've always been a very open person. I have no problem sharing an open book, but you don't realize what that does internally to you to just relive it, even in a micro dose, every single day for years at a time. It just wears you down. And so I feel so bad for my poor husband, but we met, I had, moved to Germany, and for the first 2 years or something, I just subsisted on the couch. That's all I did, because I just had a mastectomy. I'd been done with this big media tour, talking death, for so long. that I just needed time to recover physically and emotionally and move on in the next chapter of my life. So I just tried something a little bit different, went back to school, studied law, and then I think I was able to have the energy to do it again. But a lot of people don't talk about just how difficult it is to consistently speak on difficult topics like child sexual abuse, cancer, death, etc. It just grates on you, even if you aren't aware of it at the time.
So how, knowing that now and having gone through that, also can relate. I took many years off, didn't do any speaking around child advocacy centers or anything, just recently did. And it feels different now on this side of it. So now I have tools in my tool belt to say, okay, this is all I can handle. This is as much as I can revisit. What are you doing now to protect yourself as you continue to build this movement with Previvor?
Well, one, I'm in therapy, which has changed my life. I think single human on this planet should be in therapy. It's like my favorite hour of, I go maybe once a month, but still just I leave all of my problems in the room and I walk away, and it's wonderful. That has been helpful. I think also becoming a parent, it's better and it's worse. I think becoming a parent has made me empathize and feel more with my mother and what she went through. And so I've re-grieved losing my mom almost from her perspective of knowing what it's like. Oh, it's gonna make me cry, but like to know that you only have a few years with your children, and not only are you trying to save yourself, but you're trying to instill all of the knowledge, all of the virtue, all of the memories into them. And I see it in the way it manifests in my motherhood, where I'm constantly trying to create these tangible assets that they can have when maybe I die, which is just, it's crazy and it's so rational, but that's been the reality of every woman in my family. They just die and their children are left to raise themselves. And I don't want that to be for my kids. And so, while that part is hard, I'm also able to take a step back now and realize that I am living that future that I talked about. When I had my viral moment, I would always talk about my future husband and my future children, and they're in the bedroom down the hallway now. And I went through this challenging experience. I lost my mom, but it also led me to being able to have this procedure where hopefully I'm not living the same fate as all of those women. I'm not going to have to tell my little girl she's going to have to spend the rest of her life without her mom. And that, I think, has helped reframe the pain and the grief and allowed me to speak more openly about it and from a different perspective now, where it's not so raw in the sense of my inner child is, mourning the loss of my mom, but I'm seeing it now from my experience as a mother and how empowering it can be in prolonging your life.
Oh, that's so lovely and beautiful and like heartbreaking. And just, I think we could end the episode there and everybody would be like so astounded by how profound that was. Thank you for sharing that. When you talk about this period of grief in your life, well, and could be argued, grief never leaves us, right? It's just the thing that kind of stays with us forever. I'm wondering what the sort of tangible things were that you were doing, aside from obviously resting and taking time away from giving yourself that space between you and this topic that you were constantly talking about. I deeply relate to that. I'm curious to know, where you went back to school for law. I'm sure that there was something in there that was, motivated by this in your lived experience to study law. What aside from that were things that maybe you would encourage people to do if they are in a similar position of grief or just exhaustion, or, they've been kind of running on this hamster wheel for a really long time?
Well, I always say give yourself grace. And I will admit that for a very, very long time, I was just working through every series that was available on German Netflix. So I watched Gossip Girl 500,000 times. I learned how to do every possible little like nicky-nacky thing around the house. I bought a Cricut crafting machine. I I did everything to avoid getting a real job, going back to school, doing all of the things. But even the law degree was just a big distraction because I was a paralegal before I competed at Miss America. I've always wanted to go to law school. I wanted to be a constitutional attorney. And then my boss was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and he died 3 months after his diagnosis. And he was like a father to me. So it was, going through this whole thing again, like losing my mom, losing my boss slash dad. And one of the last things he said to me was, "You'd be a hell of a lawyer, but don't do this for the rest of your life." But there was just something kind of calling me back. I love to study it. I want this to be part of my life. I think it's useful. I'm here, why not do it? So it was just a period of time where I was pursuing something that was interesting to me, just intellectually interesting. I knew I wasn't going to be an attorney. I know this wasn't going to be the life that, I wanted to pursue. And obviously it's come from a place of a lot of privilege to just be able to study what you want to study and not use it down the road. But it really was a wonderful experience in just separating myself from everything in the past, the pageantry, the modeling, the public eye, and just focusing back on school, something I love to do. I love to study. I did my thesis on campaign finance law and the comparison of two Anglo-Saxon countries, which just sounds, crazy, but I loved it. I threw my heart into it. And that, I think, just gave me the deep breath that I needed. And then I just started feeling my motivation come back. And that's when I had this amazing opportunity. I'm, doom scrolling on Instagram, and I see that Sports Illustrated Swimsuit had opened up this, contest for people to submit a video. And, long story short, I submitted my video. I got fired from my coffee fetching job that, I was also doing to distract myself the day before. And then I get the email from MJ Day, the editor of the magazine, who's like, "Hey, come to Miami. We want to meet you." And that just completely changed the trajectory of my life and gave me, again, another platform to be able to talk about this. And now completely changed my life, starting the nonprofit, doing all these things, and just really positioning myself in a place I never thought that I would be. But I'm grateful that I'm here.
You mentioned starting a nonprofit. I think there's a lot of people out there who maybe have never really been in the trenches with a nonprofit, like maybe they volunteered or something, that don't realize that starting a nonprofit is just starting a business. It's the same thing. What are some of the challenges that you weren't expecting starting the Previvor, and how have you, maybe surprised yourself overcoming them?
So I didn't realize just exactly what you said. It's not difficult, but it also is, where it's just filing some paperwork, but it's one of those, you don't know what you don't know. And so trying to figure out how to draft these sort of legal documents that have to be submitted. And thank goodness, another pageant girlfriend of mine, she had just started a nonprofit. She sent me over everything and said, "Steal everything, just put your company's name into it, submit it all. This is the hard stuff. Now get to the good work."
Hashtag sisterhood.
Correct. But yeah, it's just a grind. And literally until this year, we were a nonprofit of one. It was just me doing everything, speaking in the third person, emailing as, fake person at theprevivor.org, trying to get funding, doing this and that. But I'm really proud of being able to secure large brand partnerships, grants from these corporations, just by having the courage to ask. And even if it's coming from fake person at theprevivor.org, I still feel like, okay, well, this is my intellectual property, at least going out. And, somehow
I'm still doing it.
Yeah, I have convinced these companies, and they're no slouches. The work is there. And I think it's getting past that imposter syndrome of, oh, we're just so small. We couldn't be XYZ. I'm like, absolutely not. Just ask for everything, see what you get. And so far that has worked for us. We've now been able to bring on a couple people to help, and it's just continuing to grow and grow and grow. But yeah, it's a lot of grunt work, and it's a lot of non-glamorous. Like, every person in the world wants to have the nonprofit behind their name, but they don't realize just how much of boring paper pushing it can be.
It is a grind.
Yeah, totally.
So what is some advice that you would give to the women listening to this podcast as it pertains to their health? What should they be on the lookout for?
Sort of speak at least to the breast cancer realm and then women's health in general. Number one, get to know your body. And that seems so self-explanatory, but we just don't do it. So many women are scared to touch themselves and to know what their body is like. And that's particularly true when it comes to our breasts. Like maybe our partner touches them, maybe, we do, one thing like clean ourselves in the shower, but intimately get to know what your body feels like and how your body feels. And I mean that in the sense of, hey, what's your normal biorhythm? Like, how are you waking up? What kind of energy levels you have? Because when something changes and you know your body, that's when you're able to take action. And particularly in the breast cancer space, I just encourage women, learn how to do a self-breast exam. And I think that's a really intimidating name because self-breast exam makes it feel like it should be self-explanatory, and it's not, and no one teaches you how to do it. And I realized post-mastectomy, I was telling all these women, you got to do a self-exam, you got to do a self-exam. I didn't even really know how to do it. So I taught myself how to do it. I just started putting out this easily digestible information on the internet. Here's how you do it. It takes less than a minute. Do it in the shower, laying in your bed, laying on your sofa. But this is the first line of defense. Over 50% of women find their own breast cancer, and they either do it by accident or they do it by something like a self-exam. And that happens sometimes too, like during intimacy, or partner finds it. There's two women that I have who just did a photo shoot with us, and their breast cancers were found by their partner. And so they know your body sometimes better than you know your body. So get to know what's normal for you. Then you can know if there's something to change, and then go to the doctor. I want to beat down the door with this. I know it's hard. I know it can be expensive. Healthcare, particularly in America, it's a disaster. But I have two women very close to me in my life who put it off. One of them who had a child, thought that, something in her breast that she had felt was just, a clogged milk duct or something. She ended up being diagnosed with the stage 4 breast cancer. Another one who was the little sister of my sorority sister just found out she had breast cancer after ignoring it for a couple of months. Stage 4, incurable breast cancer. So please go to the doctor. The earlier the better. Because if you can catch breast cancer early, you can treat it.
Okay, Allyn, so we have a game that is called Fury or Fun. So we are going to read a list of things, and then you will tell us if they make you feel furious or if you think they're fun. It's just kind of a fun little game that we play.
Okay.
So the first one on my list is, how do you feel about wellness influencers?
Furious.
The long groan right before we need to leave.
But it's
that in the
I'm
clip.
thinking on it because I'm trying to be politically correct here, where, I guess someone could technically think I'm in the wellness space. I'm do I want to talk negatively about myself? But so much of it is just woo-woo bullshit, and I can't. It makes me furious.
I think, to me, when I think of wellness, I think more of people who are pushing products on you, or you need to buy this probiotic, or you need to do whatever. And to me, I just think it's so funny when you combine that with people who are anti-science, anti-doctors, anti-trusting medicine, but they're willing to click on a link on TikTok and buy whatever vitamin somebody is pushing. I'm this just doesn't make sense.
It's just also preying on people who probably really need help and taking away the resources that they should be putting into actual medical care into whatever snake oil you're selling down the road. And that just infuriates me.
That's also an extremely empathetic take. Thank you for that.
Gotcha.
Okay, the next one is pink washing during Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
So I am probably in the minority here, where obviously pink washing is not a good thing. Slapping a pink ribbon or a pink product and not actually giving money back to organizations that are furthering research, terrible thing. However, the month of October, I think, has really been demonized, and people always want to just beat this down the road. Oh, this is so terrible, but the breast cancer community should be so incredibly grateful that we have the voice of a month like that. Name any other disease that has the voice, the longevity, the money behind it to put towards actual research, development, advocacy. So I think that it can be fun if it's done in the right way. Obviously, like I said, not good to scam people, but if you have some sort of like consumer knowledge, you're being thoughtful where you're putting your money, I do think that it is a great cause, and I'm very grateful that it exists because I don't think that we would be where we are in terms of breast cancer treatment without it. So I try to be grateful that it exists.
I think I'm with you on that. Like, what's wrong with bringing awareness to it? I will say though, to your point, that's also Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I find that no one ever knows that because
Had no idea.
breast cancer is so at the
Yeah.
forefront. So I do think it's one of those things where it's like so helpful for all of the companies that really come on board during that month to bring attention to something that needs it. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think any sort of awareness and conversation around it is a good thing. And it's, reminding that woman that she needs to get the mammogram she's been putting off, or, oh, I need to do this, or, hey, maybe I get in to do my well woman exam this year. So I think that it's a nice reminder. It's a wonderful fundraiser. And I think that it helps get the message out.
Okay, this next one. How do you feel about the like matching mommy daughter workout sets? Have you seen those like on like TikTok and stuff?
This makes me laugh. So I have not seen this, but that just gives me like Mean Girls mom. Like, I'm a regular mom. Like, I'm a cool mom. Like, my daughter here, we are in like a matching like Lululemon outfit. I don't know. I'm fine with matching with your children, but that's like a 5 and under sort of thing. Like, once we get past
sure.
that, I think it's time to give it up. And I don't know if any under 5-year-old should be wearing athleisure, but
For sure.
so
You've got on
I think-
$100 pair of Lululemon pants on your 4-year-old.
I'm like envisioning a very like specific outfit. Like I'm envisioning like the velour tracksuit, right? Like, the Mean Girls, like
It's a
an
moment,
actual
yeah.
juicy couture.
Juicy on your butt.
Yeah.
I just feel so bad for these kids from just the consumerism standpoint, and seeing like it's much less in Germany. People are not keeping up with the Joneses type thing here. I think just because advertising is not the same, and there's a lot of restrictions, particularly for children. But I mean, you're just seeing like 6, 7-year-olds going to school with their $60 Stanley Cup and their new iPhone. And I mean, if your parents can afford it, great, fine. Like, I have no problem with it. But the pressure to keep up, to have XYZ name brand, like, I just don't feel like that was part of my childhood. I got bullied for other things because I was weird, not because of not having the right, water cup. But I don't know. It just seems like so much added extra pressure when there's already so many things that kids need to worry about.
I feel like I know the next one, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So you don't show your girls online. And there are all of these new laws coming into place state by state regarding vlogging, mommy vlogging, family vlogging. Fun or fury?
Fury. Children have a right to privacy. They have a right to create their own digital footprint, and they have a right to decide if their public information and their image is used online. I have made that choice for myself. Sometimes I look back and, question whether or not it was the right decision, but I was able to make that decision as an adult. And I think there is a way to share your children online that is done in a respectful way, but I also just don't think it is a good idea for the safety of the children. There's a French study that just came out, and they said that over 50% of images found on the dark web in pedophile places are posted by parents themselves online. So whether that's the most innocent photo, and I think that's what parents get stuck in their head. They think, well, I'm not posting the picture of my daughter in the bathtub. I'm not posting the picture of them in the swimsuit or, in some sort of compromising position. But particularly now with the rise of AI, what disgusting people can do to images of children is unlimited. And I just think that we owe it to this generation to give them the opportunity to live a life where they make the decisions about where their face, their likeness, their life story is shared.
Yeah, totally.
It goes back to the millennial parenting. I think it's something that's even among our generation shifting. Like it seemed harmless and fun, and I mean, I can even admit that it has changed in my point of view just recently, you know? So I think a lot of us are starting to realize that maybe we had the choice because we came into social media when we were teens. So these are the first generations growing up where someone else is making that choice for them. And is that the right thing to do? So, yeah.
Yeah,
totally.
and I mean, even me, I shared my daughter Eve for the first, couple of months, and then my husband just kept saying, I don't feel comfortable with this. And a lot of German parents, they have a lot of really strict laws here on the right to personhood, starting from the day that you're born. And I started seeing even in their classroom, you had to consent to even pictures of your children being posted on the wall inside of the school. And I realized just how seriously they were taking it. And the more that I learned about, these really dark, nasty things that none of us want to think about, but the idea that I could inadvertently land my child in the hands of a pedophile, it's not worth it to me to get whatever dopamine hit I'm getting from sharing my children. And I'm proud of my kids. I love them. I would love for my friends and family to see these photos, even the friends that I've developed online, but it's just not worth it to me.
Yeah, Mallory and I did a whole episode on Ruby Frankie as one of like our first episodes, and I read Sherry Frankie's memoir recently, and yeah, very eye-opening to that entire world, and especially from reading it from a child's point of, a person who has been through that, their point of view. That was very eye-opening for me. So totally agree. Okay. Shifting gears drastically for this last one. I wrote this down because I recently heard about these. Okay. So Gwyneth Paltrow has Goop, right? They sell Yoni eggs. Do you know what that is?
I don't. I feel like I've heard this. Like, I'm chronically online, so this is floated around somewhere, but go on.
So
if it makes you feel any better, I too have no idea what this is.
Okay, so a Yoni egg is like a thing that women can use to essentially enhance their pelvic floor strength. Is like
it's a vagina weights, right?
It's a weight for your veg. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
100%. Yeah.
How
do we feel?
Fun. Full fun. I've used these before, actually. I think that they are great. I think you can overuse them. Fun fact, I owned a public relations firm for a very short period of time. Had to move out of it. It was just a very stressful period of my life. But one of my clients was a pelvic floor physical therapist. So for anybody who out there, Dr. Marcy Crouch, she's wonderful. She talks so much about the importance of your pelvic floor. And I think women should know more about it. Most women spend their entire lives postpartum pissing themselves when they're doing jumping jacks or laughing or sneezing or not being able to do everyday things because they lack the strength in their pelvic floor, and no one gives them the information that they need to rebuild it. So not to praise Germany, it's the greatest country, I miss America, but we have pelvic floor physical therapy courses for every single woman postpartum. And it's just a part of the culture. Everyone goes and they do it. And there's significant reduction in vaginal issues, incontinence issues, things really across the board because they're getting the care that they need. So again, this is I think it's a feminist issue. I think every woman should know how to take care of their pelvic floor. And so, was it Yoni egg? Is that what it's called?
I think Yoni.
Oh, Yoni egg.
Yeah,
so
it's like the
pro Yoni egg. I think we should start whitelisting them. They're the next merch for the Pretty Furious podcast.
We'll put a little PF on our Yoni egg.
PF. No, it'll say lit. This is lit.
I
Also,
love
just so
that.
we're clear, you don't have to be postpartum. A sneeze will get me from time to time.
Oh,
I'm just getting older.
I will say, I just went to the chiropractor this morning, and my chiropractor said that what she sees is I'm actually going to a pelvic floor physical therapist. My husband and I will be trying to conceive later on this year. And so I want to be proactive about the strengthening my pelvic floor, all the things. And my chiropractor said that a huge issue that women run into is actually that they don't know how to relax their pelvic floor. So it's so, like, our pelvic muscles are so tight all the time because we're stressed and we don't know how to get in touch with our bodies. And she was like, yeah, and like the Yoni eggs can be really helpful for that, because I was telling her about this episode. So
This is really,
yeah.
it's funny that you say that, because I had 2 C-sections and they were the result of me being both times 2 weeks past my due date. And I did IVF, so I'm 2 weeks past my IVF, the day that you get pregnant due date. I think that I had a pelvic floor relaxing issue. For whatever reason, everything was just sealed shut. Nothing's coming out of there. I never dilated past 0. Never, ever with both pregnancies.
Wow.
And
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if that's like internalized stress, anxiety, not opening myself to the world or what, but I've always felt that I don't know. I need one of these eggs to start relaxing myself. No more working out, more vagina relaxing.
More vagina eggs.
I also knew a woman who could a Yoni egg that was like 40 pounds. Isn't that crazy?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
She could lift a Yoni egg that was, I actually think she made it higher than that. I think it was somewhere more like closer to 60 pounds. But she would do these exercises where she could lift, like it was like a weight that she could lift. That was like, I know.
CrossFit
Wow.
vagina.
It's
This is
I know.
insane material.
Kudos to her.
New Miss America talent unlocked.
rearranging furniture, packing a suitcase, lifting weights with your vagina. It's a new era.
Okay, last thing. At the beginning of the show, we always talk about a product we can't live without, because you can't be pretty furious without being pretty first. Is there a product you have to share with us?
So I actually just went like mega viral, like 10 million views for curling my hair with a curling iron and pinning it up with these like duck clips. And I just got so fed up with seeing these influencers on TikTok, pushing like the Dyson, you've got to have this $400 thing to be able to, do your hair this way. I'm like, we're in a recession, babe, okay? Like, we need to bring it back to basics, and every pageant girl knows all you need is the $10 Conair curling iron and some duckbill clips, and you got it. So those are my products. Like, if we connect them together, you need the cheap curling iron, the duckbill clips, you're good to go.
All right, Allyn. This was so fun. Thank you for joining us.
Oh my gosh, this
Thanks
was so
for being
great.
here.
Thank you guys for the very thought-provoking, deep questions. Like, you get the same questions over and over again, so I really appreciate that.